All right, everyone, it's an early Saturday morning. It is the council special meeting of March 21st, 2026. Can you hear me? Audio? Yes? Working. Okay. Calling the meeting to order at, we're a little bit late, we'll call it 10:07. And would you join me in pledging allegiance to the flag and you?
Have it up on the screen.
There we go. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, civil, with liberty and justice for all. And it looks like we have no council members doing teleconference. City clerk, could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Kern. Here. Councilmember Lance. Councilmember O'Connell. And Mayor Mackin.
And can I get a first and second to adopt the agenda as it stands, please? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None. Public comment. We welcome speakers providing public comment, but please be advised this is a limited public forum. It is therefore important for speakers to stay on topic, whether speaking to a particular agenda item or speaking during general public comment. On-topic matters are those that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. Speakers, whether during oral communications or on agenda items, will have 3 minutes. Following these rules helps ensure the city council can get to all the items on the agenda, including hearing public comment on the items. If a speaker fails to follow these rules, they're disrupting the meeting and will be warned. If a speaker continues to ignore the rules or is otherwise disruptive, their opportunity to speak will be ended and they may be precluded from speaking on any other items. Is there any member of the public wishing to make a public comment on an item that's not on the agenda?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing no hands, no one online. All right, so we're moving along. You'll start with the workshop. This is a priority study session. Could we have staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council, and members of the department and staff team. Really appreciate everybody being here this morning for what I'm going to call our second annual priority study session. So we included the process last year. I'd like to have the next slide, please. This is where we're at. We're a little behind. Next slide. So I want to just provide some ground rules. I think as always, just an opportunity to share these kinds of thoughts. I think it is human nature to feel passionate and excited about the ideas that each of you are bringing forward today. And what's the most important concept is that we are creating a space where the council can have a conversation with itself about those priorities. So to the extent that they can, these are ways to make sure that they can be as productive as possible. Next slide, please. This is you. There's a priority. There's a list here. We've talked about this last year, and what is probably more important is to talk about what isn't a priority, which is the next slide. A priority isn't a specific project. A priority isn't something so generic as housing. It can be a mix of projects. It can be something that's, such as we say here, clear the CIP list or improve infrastructure. Really, the focus is to have something at the broad level that you can build either through suggestions from the council or from staff and the public, the types of projects or other initiatives that can support your priority. As a reminder, you will show them in a second, that the 3 priorities the council created last year are very much priorities. They're not specific projects. They're related to an overarching goal. Next slide, please. Why is this important? As you saw last year, it affects the city budget to make sure that our commissions and committees are aligned. And as you know, the staff is continuing to align that process to the budgetary process. The latest direction to the committees and commissions is related to when they have their liaison meetings, so that can support the budgetary process starting in January. a lot of stuff coming our way, so having an understanding of how the next active priority is important. And it's important because we're continuing a process that was taken last year. Next slide, please. All right, so this is where we're at. So this year, there were 3 goals. The first 2 goals, as I understood them and the staff has understood them, were intended to be multi-year because of the nature of the need. The third will likely be a multi-year project too, but we'll be able to initiate a number of very specific projects up front. So you can see from an implementation standpoint where we're at. It should be these information, but these are the parts of how we've been trying to implement each of these 3 priorities. Next slide, please. I wanted to specifically show volunteer implementation. You heard me speak to something called Notion Boards, project management tool that Christina and Molly have been experimenting with members of the staff. We wanted to show the Brisbane Pairs Notion Board. And this is something that we can make forward facing at the appropriate time. But what it allows us to do is understand who, when, where, and how we're going to complete projects in the time frame that the council wishes us to complete them. So you can get a sense of some of the initiatives that are coming forward that we may not have talked about just yet, but this is a great way for us to stay on track. Next slide, please. Okay, we are moving along. I think I got us ahead again. Next slide. So as we're sharing fiscal realities of where we're at and what you've seen in the past from our previous priority session last year, we are operating in an environment where there are a number of challenging fiscal realities, but as you heard Thursday night through the great work of staff and council direction, the city's budgetary position has improved drastically, which we hope allows for a high-level strategic conversation on what's important to spend those funds on in the future. Next slide. This slide has changed from the production of the packet. This includes input from 1 additional council member. Those are both at your dais. The initial submittal from Mayor Mackin, and then we added it to this slide as well, so it should be somewhat repetitive. We'll come back to this in a moment, but this is what we heard from you in my request in the last couple months on the types of subjects that you'd like to speak to.
And we can add it to this too. I mean, I didn't know.
No, this is not intended to be a stat. This is just what you can share.
Okay. So we can bring things up.
Please, yeah. And the expectation through the facilitation process is that we'll call on each council member to speak to the items that they want, and they can speak to the items that are on this slide or other items that they wish to speak to. And also that Councilmember Kern has a couple of very quick videos that highlight one of his priorities that he'd like to discuss.
Just to be clear, this is replacing the slide that was in the deck. So this is new as of this morning, last night, and it has doubled in length.
Very additional priority, 8 additional concepts that I'm introducing. Got it. We are going to be taking notes. We had hoped to show them live with technologies not allowing us to completely do it, but using the Notion board technology you saw a moment ago. Christina's going to be writing everything down. And what I think we'll do is post-meeting, we'll send that back out just to make sure we've captured everything in the appropriate way. So please feel free to edit that. Next slide. These were ideas from last year that weren't necessarily implemented, but I wanted to keep these in the forefront, just so these reminded that there were other ideas that were gone. Next slide. So we reached a point where the council, we invite the council to have a dialogue about what it would like to consider priorities in the fiscal year 26, 27. If you go back 2 slides, we'll just keep this up. If it's okay with the mayor, what I thought I would do is just start calling on council members and inviting them to make their pitch and have a conversation. We've got a couple hours to have this discussion. Lunch will be served at 11:30. The break that we have for lunch is, I think, a little bit later. No, we timed it perfectly. 10-minute break, 11:30, so lunch will be at the same time. I'm going to not pick the person who just started showing. Vice Mayor Davis, would you like to start? No.
Sure, I mean, I get it.
Someone has to go first.
So do you just want me to call out the things on the list that are particularly important?
Well, starting with what you have indicated, and so they're on the list, so if you want to point those out.
Yeah,
But this really is an opportunity to focus on things you want to focus on.
great, okay. So, I would love for us to, we looked at, Look and I worked on strategies of ways to use our affordable housing fund, different programs, and the council adopted that report, but I'd like to see us put more action behind it and come up with, something that, a program that we're actually utilizing. So if we want to have a first-time home buyer program, let's structure that. Let's start advertising that that's available to the public. If we really want to, subsidize rent for low-income residents, again, let's put that together, start advertising that to the community. If we want to, really try to use this for a project, then we should be talking pretty seriously about where is that project going to go and what's going to make sense in Brisbane. So, in the time that I've been on the council, we've sold properties. We've added money to the Affordable Housing Fund, but other than maybe during COVID, we really haven't utilized these funds at all. And so I think that it's really time that we're putting this money to good use for our residents. So I'd love to look at that. Of course, Baylands project completion, that's going to happen when it's going to happen. Bank of America building, it feels like we were gaining a lot of traction and then it's just kind of lost steam. And so I would really like to focus more on figuring out what are we doing ultimately with that property. And I think that that's then connected with what we're doing with the teen center and what we're doing with the community center, because we do have limited funds. And we have now 3 vacant properties that are in 4 places in Brisbane. And so I think it's difficult to have a conversation about one without factoring in the other properties, considering all of those properties are going to require investment of money from us. So a decision about one impacts the other, and I think we need to get to the bottom of what we're planning to do with those. I think Visitation Avenue needs help. I think that there are some things that we can do. I think that our businesses are really struggling. Part of that is for forces that are beyond our control, like the rise in DoorDash, I think, has really contributed to a decrease in business on visitation from Crocker Park, from Sierra Point. And people are ordering DoorDash. They have unlimited options, and they're not leaving their office. Instead of the people who would go to Julie's or Melissa's every few days, and they would get in their car for Crocker and come and patronize their businesses. So things like that are kind of out of our control. But I think that what's in our control is how we're zoning for visitation and really taking a hard look at what's possible there, what are policies that make sense, that are going to yield. Do we want to preserve commercial? If so, what type of commercial units, what's the size that they need to be to really be viable? Do we want to start seeing some of our commercial turnover into residential? How is that going to impact visitation in the long term? So, and I know that some of this work is forthcoming, and so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, if I may, Vice Mayor, we do have the dais as well. It's not a comprehensive list, but a 2-pager of items related to Visitation Avenue that we just wanted to include. If you guys are having a discussion today.
So this is a staff document?
This is the staff document, just the working list. And if you want to reference it online, up on the screen, we did put it up on the screen. But this wasn't meant to be done. Thank you. Sorry.
Of course, the marina, there's some hard decisions that we're going to need to make. a lot of these things are things we're already doing, and so I'm just wanting to support continued momentum. And then, of course, Mission Blue seems like it's going to be timely. Let's talk about Mission Blue and updates that need to happen there. So, you know, I of course feel that the kitchen is, it needs a redesign to be more friendly for events. And if we could do that, that would be fantastic. So those are my top priorities, but I think that so many of these items on the list, looking at them, I think there's certainly a case to be made for all of them, why they're important for us to spend our time working on. So thank you to everyone.
And I think it makes sense. This is a good pace. I think for the purposes of this portion of the conversation, if each you want to highlight, you know, a 5 minute or so back, the things you want to work on, and then I think they kind of more dynamic conversation instead of, you know, just starting to pick and choose the items that has been brought up. Councilmember Lentz, would you like to next?
Sure. You know, I'm glad that we're having this, and I'm glad it's second annual. You know, whenever you do you take on an endeavor like this, you want to see results, right? And you want to see structure. There should be some kind of criteria that I agree with you, Matt. There's a lot of noble things on this list. How do you get through all of that? And so, you know, it just made me think of, like, okay, well, should we have something that, you know, do we already have a council subcommittee on it? Or do we apply to a subcommittee? You know, how much staff time will be allocated? Because that makes a difference as well. You know, can we afford it? You know, how do we fund this? And then, you know, like, what kind of an impact does it have on the greater community? You know, is it mostly focus on a smaller group in the community, or does it have a greater impact? And then, you know, is there a short term, or are we looking at some kind of long term viability? So just, you know, just be thinking about that. So the other two that come up for me, and I'm glad that you know, that we have the priorities that were mentioned last year that were talked about, but they didn't make it on the list. And the first is the Bayland. It's working in this planning process that encourages the public to dream big, demand best practices, and fosters greater connectivity with our existing community. So when Jeremy asked me, hey, what are your priorities? I said, you know, I really don't have any priorities except one. And that's really the Baylands. I mean, I think the priorities that we initiated last year, I think are really good. And we can see results, you know, that we are moving things forward. But there isn't anything that's going to change our community more so than the Baylands. And this is the time where we are going to need to engage our community in the best way possible. And so I'm not going to go like dive into like how we would do it, but I'm just saying that, like, to me, that is super top-notch priority. And then the second priority for me, and it is something I didn't think about until just recently, and two things happened. One was we got a letter from folks about you know, what's the future of the Crawford Park going forward. And we, you know, it's like, do you know, is what we currently have good enough? Right? Are there some blind spots that maybe that we need to tighten up our ordinances? How we want the future of the park to operate? You know, it's a great economic engine for us, but it also it is this industrial area that is in the middle of two, you know, thriving neighborhoods. So we have to make sure that, okay, is what we currently have for them. And then, we just recently had a purchase of the Calsters properties, which I think is great because we weren't receiving any property tax revenue, and they weren't always the best folks to work with. But the entity that bought it now controls a significant majority of the footprint of the industrial park. And, when you're looking at investments, you don't put all your eggs into one basket, you diversify. Sometimes too much of a good thing might not be such a good thing. And so we really need to be smart because that entity, hey, I'm all in favor of working with them. But they're extremely wealthy and powerful. And so what do we have? We have our zoning, right? And so we need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves. And so to me, that's a huge priority.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Kern, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. Again, thank you for bringing me together today. I get to look out at the audience and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's almost all staff. So you guys, thanks for coming out. I really appreciate that. I appreciate all the input that I received so far. I did not include things like the Bayland Inventory Project, those kind of things on my list because I just assumed that that's our job and we're just working that going forward. Some of the additional stuff that I included is a deep dive into Sierra Point Marina and doing a 25-year strategy and assessment. Things that I think that this might include, and this I'm stepping down to the project level, but these are sort of some tactics. Capital recovery modeling, possible third-party leasing venture, full divestiture, raising it and repurposing it, doing a deep market analysis, which I know that Molly has already started in conjunction with some folks at Berkeley, what the fees and general fees are across the entire bay. We're sort of bringing that data set together and having a hard look at that. And then crazy out of the box thinking is maybe some alternative monetization, they could have like, Madison Davis Marina actually wanted to buy the main tracks or something like that. So, but just thinking about different things that we might do to just assess what's going on at the marina and actually have a pretty solid game plan going forward on how we're going to proceed. Another topic I had was Visitation Avenue revitalization, which I know Councilmember Davis has touched on already. Some tactics there. I was thinking maybe some deep scrubbing, deep cleaning, power washing schedule. Cleaning the side streets, 508 feet, 800 feet in, some better branding, enhanced lighting, maybe doing some facade improvement rebates for the businesses that are there, rezoning to prohibit new residential. I know Mitch Bull has mentioned maybe doing some sort of annual festival, which I think would be amazing. And then, of course, sitting with council, or I should say Mayor Mackin, on the complete streets as liaisons. Continue to prioritize and focus on their work, street and traffic safety there. So that's two. Number three, economic developments. I know I've been digging around and sticking my nose in places that I keep getting pushed back on regarding impact, revenue, business license, things like that. So I think doing a deep study on business retention and diversifying our tax base with new industries is a really solid approach, and being able to take a look at all the data that we're now getting in through HDO and sort of slicing and dicing that. I know that Councilmember Lentz recommended that Jeremy, he and I take a walk down industrial and just knock on the business doors. It felt a little hokey, I'm not gonna lie to you, that thing. But we did that, and it was straight out of an American Business or American Express small business commercial. We got to meet these people firsthand. They welcomed us in, and they showed us their facilities, everything that they were working on, and you just have such a diverse business in town. I'd like to see what's working really well for us and just continue offering that out. The next thing on my list was, in general, litter abatement. Emmett Cunningham is here today as a guest. He came to council and said, you know what, our fees aren't high enough for dumping. Councilmember Davis has now brought it up twice as council meetings. I am fully supportive of taking a hard look at a litter abatement program across the board, raising fines to the maximum allowable, instituting a Proctor Park business adoption of their section of the Proctor Park Trail, including the urn behind. seems like the businesses, some of them are big contributors to the litter out there. The amount of cigarette butts and litter at the dog park is absolutely obscene. So that's something we can look at. And then just dog waste pickup and enforcement. That's number 4. Number 5, freshwater reclamation. I brought this up last year. There was a little bit of pushback on it, and I understand that freshwater reclamation is an expensive project. It requires pipes and places to store the water and so on and so forth. I get it. But 3 months out of the year, we have water coming down San Bruno Mountain. And I don't know about the purity of the water. I'm not a scientist, but I will tell you from a mechanical filtering standpoint, the water's pretty clear. If you take a glass and you look at it, you're like, there's not a lot of junk in it. It's not cloudy, it's not murky, it's just running off the rocks. So I did a little assessment on that, and we've got 2 spots where we get a ton of water coming off. One is at the end of Quarry Road Trail, right where the actual Quarry Road starts to go to Quarry. And the other one is at West Hill Drive and the Crowley Park Trail, a ton of water going out of there. So I figure at 2 gallons per second over the height, or I should say, on the daily during the high season, that's about 175,000 gallons of fresh water that we're just flushing out to the day. What does that look like, you guys? This is the marketing guy in me. That would take half a day to fill the Trevi Fountain in Italy. That would take 3 days to fill a 660-gallon Olympic-sized swimming pool. And if you've ever been to Las Vegas and you've seen the Bellagio fountains, we could fill it in 127 days. So I'm not asking for us to build infrastructure around capturing fresh water and doing all this, because we're hearing from various partners, including Lines, high-speed rail, including one of the businesses out in Duffield, that they could use that fresh water for their businesses. I think we should just study what it might take after that, just to study. So I think we have an opportunity there. And then last on this list, oh, and I have videos. You want to show them? No, I'm not going to show them.
Of the water?
Yeah.
Oh, I would like to see.
Oh,
So one of you can show one.
Maybe at
Well-
the lunch, at lunch.
well, they're about 9 seconds.
Oh,
Yeah. And you can pick whichever one you want.
Let's see.
I'm not a videographer at all.
second one, right in the middle of the top,
This one.
browse it. And then- Oh,
Oh, yeah, sorry. Ta-da. Let's see. Can you see?
So obviously that's more than 2 gallons a second. And that just means getting it right. So, and that goes down throughout our entire rainy season. So it is a ton of fresh water just running off the mountain. So we got it.
And then this one.
Oh, that's off the Quarry Road. That was taken in February. Just to give you an idea of what I'm saying. So that was number 5, number 6, and I'm almost done. Council meeting type expansion. So we're doing our annual summit today, which I think is fantastic. It's the 2nd annual, and I think that this really yields really good results. I'd like to see us implement quarterly alignments, which just checks on this list and our progress on the list, and we can adjust it as need be. And then I know Jeremy and the staff are working on notion boards, and notion boards are kind of a form of RAD reporting, which is red, amber, green, but it allows us to do a quick check on a monthly basis to compare where we're at on sub-project progress. So I think implementing something like that would be great. And then just fiscal transparency and oversight discipline, that's one. Just, embracing ongoing education with council regarding fiscal topics. Like we just did one on overtime, which was incredibly helpful for me. And just doing maybe quarterly deep dives into a variety of topics that council servicing. So I think that would be, would go a long way in helping the council be on this education side.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you. I think this is an important exercise that we do, and to get an idea of where everybody's at and where it's on the city direction. As you know, I'm a short timer here. My term is coming to an end. And but I still have long-term concerns about the city's fiscal health and what direction they're going and what the city will be like 2, 4, 6, 20 years from now and beyond. So I'm going to say that my general wants for the city is to continue really strongly to invest in the things that are going to make a difference long term. Some of those things are diversification and proper planning to make sure that we have businesses in our city that we want and that are going to give us the revenue we need to move forward in a healthy way. Part of that is to really work on the environmental issues that we have, whether that be sea level rise is going to affect the economic vitality, or the livability, climate change, those type of things. So I think those are really important, but what it really comes down to is using money when we have it to preempt the issues that we know are on their way. And that's paying down our liabilities for debt, for employment issues. That's our biggest liability is our pensions and OPEB kind of stuff, our post-employment benefits. And I think that those are going to be an issue that can take a huge bite out of our budget and really curtail the fun route that we want to do. And so investing in our infrastructure, putting money into our capital improvement projects, and some of them can be the money going into the projects that are uplifting and maintaining the services and the things that are not necessarily have to be done to keep the city operating. And that might be, recreation and building facilities that are non-essential. I think keeping up with Mission Blue and putting in a workable kitchen, but not a working kitchen, because people aren't going there to cook, and that's, to me, financially infeasible. But having a place where people can store food, wash what they need to do, have a viable space to do what it's designed to do, which it isn't currently. But then I think we really need to invest in our infrastructure, in the pipes and the water and the sewer system, and get that figured out, because then we're not spending money on trying to keep up with just barely maintaining and keeping, the broken leg set in the streets. We need to make it where it's viable for the long term. So for me, most of it really goes down to fiscal financial responsibility instead of looking for other methods, but that really does include looking at what our zoning and our planning is looking like to make sure that we do keep very diversified. And I think that it's really important. Councilmember Kern mentioned that he bought industrial and, met all these different business owners. A lot of them I know from my days doing the work that I did. I was in probably 70% of those businesses. Predominantly, they were auto repair. But we don't control those anymore. Those are part of the Baylands. So most of the people are on short-term leases. A lot of people have left because they don't have the same opportunities, knowing that something's going to happen out there. The people who manage the Baylands have changed how they work with their leases, with their customers, and we need to be on top of that to look at how that's going to affect interim use And so I think working on the infrastructure, looking at our zoning and the interim use that we are doing, and paying down our liabilities has to be number one for me. I think a lot of the other things will come along if we have good infrastructure and we have a good base to fund those infrastructure improvements. But that's where I would say that my number one concern is, and even though I'll be leaving, I think that's a really important thing to be looking at, is the long-term fiscal implications of all the decisions that this council will make this year and going forward. They're not.
All right, hard act to follow. First of all, I want to thank staff and all my colleagues for your willingness to do this. If there was one way I would characterize this year, is that I think we're taking a really hard look at how we do things, how we've done them in the past, and how we need to do them better. And that hasn't been done for years. And that is everything from planning to nuts and bolts of controls within the city, how we approach different projects. And when I look at the priority list, what it tells me, this is a huge list. In fact, it doesn't have a copy. This is decisions. And I've been going to council meetings for over 25 years, even way before I was on the council. And I don't think I have ever in my time in Brisbane seen a council that is facing this level of challenge. And all of these are valid and worthy and needing attention. But what most of these represent to me are decisions. And I don't see how we're going to get through all these decisions in 1 year. But I think it's very healthy to look at them and say, we've got a lot to figure out. That being said, what I'm finding, and maybe all the rest of you, various subcommittees that we work on, and I've mentioned to Jeremy and Christina, is that we have a lot of overlap. It's not monocular vision, and that's a hazard. That to me is a trap you can get into of just, well, let's just fix this and not think about how it affects other things around it. So we can talk about visitation and how does that affect the teen center. We can talk about the community center, but how does that affect Mission Blue? We have decisions, not just putting Band-Aids or refurbishing or expanding things, but deciding what are the best uses, not just historical uses, but what do we want them to be going forward? Because we have actually not just challenges, but to me, these are opportunities. This city, this council has not done this, as far as I know, for decades, where we can look at community center and say, should it be that? Should we repurpose it into something else? What would be the best use? Mission Blue, is it adequate? Someday, should we have a different center? Should we be thinking that way? Is it worth it to put a ton of money into that site? What do we want to do with it? And how we parse out how to approach this, I think, is really the difficulty. And how do you put priorities on it? We can talk about Bank of America. Well, what does Bank of America have to do with Teen Center? A lot, because it's the whole area. Prologis and zoning. What does that have to do with things on here? You and I, Cliff, are working on looking at Parkside 2, how we look at that whole area. Visitation Avenue is part of that. How do we decide where our area of retail and commerce is? And for me, the biggest emphasis I would like to see is that we not lose sight of the big picture and how these things overlap. That being said, you may know this about me already. I'm a nuts and bolts person. Terry, you said the fun crap. Thank you. I like that euphemism. I don't deal with the fun crap because my approach in life is You take the vacation after you put the roof on the house and you fix the car. So for me, the quality of life issues, I a lot of times leave to my colleagues, but also I believe the quality of life issues are already very much vested in all of our staff and all of our department heads, because you're aware of how everything we do affects the public. And we're often restricted by funds and what's feasible. But like Terry, I'm way more practical looking at years of COVID, and I'm not expecting, that's the other thing I want to say is we need to abandon what was it before COVID. We are here today, a lot has changed. People work from home. The world is not the same. How do we go forward in this new world? What is it going to look like? And our perception of the last 10 years, the next 10 may be dramatically different. So I'd also like us to just be a little bit more open-minded to thinking creatively and not just looking backwards on what was status quo, if that makes sense. That being said, a couple things I'd like to touch on. Councilmember Kern, you brought up water reclamation. Not a bad idea. I recall 15 years ago, several residents talking about water coming down the mountain, Paul's Gal, many times over. I have a concern about it though, and here's where things overlap. That water flushes the bay. That water creates wetlands. That water is something that the soil and the hydrology and the geology has depended on. So when we start tinkering with that, we've got to be careful. So it's not a bad idea, but my point is simply we need to really investigate things thoroughly. The implications, there's part of my overlap on it. We've talked a lot about wildfire and the sending flyers out from North County Fire and telling people remove the weeds and clean up around your house. It's not working. It's not working. And then the city has properties all over the acres, and there's lots of brush. And in the last 20 years, I look up on the mountain, it used to be lawn in the fall, just grassland. And now it's green. And it's not grass, it's trees and shrubs. And that's danger, that's fuel, as North County will tell us. Anything that's low, it's fuel. And so is that healthy on that mountain? And all of your neighbors, I've got neighbors that have trees that overgrow to our gutters and the side of our house, and is that fair? And we've got many residents. And I know Emmett Cunningham, you're here. Insurance, homeowners insurance. What do you do when insurance companies are flying drones over our homes and saying, oh, well, that house, sorry, Madison, your neighbor's trees are encroaching on your house, so you're going to pay double your insurance. We need to actually reach one-on-one residents in town about their personal responsibility and how it affects everyone next to them. This is serious. If we have a major wildfire, we are in big trouble. And if you don't think that's a danger, we've had wildfires in the past couple decades, several. So who's to say it won't happen? When we've got 90 degrees in March, I think it's really possible. I could go through all the things on the list. I think tackling the items that have been pushed aside because of having to dip in reserves would be top on my list. Because we don't often have the opportunity to kind of clean house and get them up to speed. And if we're going to get a solid foundation going forward, we need to do that. We could deal with all kinds of niceties, and I'm not against that. But if the waters in the sewers collapse, or as Moss told us in overtime just the other day, if his crew is spending 95% of their overtime addressing problems with aging infrastructure, we're being foolish with the money. Why would we do that? Fix it, and then we don't have the overtime. Let's get Brisbane on a good footing for the future. So that's Without going through it all, I think our challenge is to figure out how do we prioritize, and we might have to have several at the same level, working at the same time, and how we coordinate our subcommittees with staff. This is not easy. This is going to be extremely difficult for the next 5 years.
Thank you to each of you.
I have a question.
Oh,
How many priorities would you like us to agree upon?
I think it's fair, 3 to 6 priorities is usually a fair place to make. Now, obviously, you have one priority that has 47 parts, you have another priority that's got 1 part. So it does have the effect to resources, staffing, et cetera. But I think that that's a fair place to land. Because I think what it does is, and I heard this from a couple of councilors, Mayor Mackin, it's very hard to build this down. This is the hardest thing that council can do, is to take from a bucket of essentially infinite need and decide where are we going to spend the time. And it does mean saying that other things are not priorities.
May I make a suggestion in that regard? I think whittling down to 3 to 5 to 6 may not be the best solution. I think some of these things, they require the thought. It may require an initial step that it will continue over several years. There are some that have potential to actually be resolved sooner. And we can break it into different buckets, because planning and budgeting for something, even if it's not going to be done and it's over a 10-year period, that can be done now. And yet that doesn't have to be like a project priority that this will be completed. It's a duration.
Well, and maybe this is an example. So in the fall, it's the staff's intent for your regular 2-year schedule for budget to bring back the CIP. And we all know the CIP needs to be cleaned up. It has been some time since this council has had an opportunity to look at this. We were preparing for this. We wanted to give you the strongest figures associated with that. And honestly, it's been so long that any number that I throw out will reflect the reality of how much things cost, et cetera, et cetera. But these are, we're talking, 8, 9 figures, depending on where you're at, depending on the. So there is an intention to have a very deep conversation about where the CIP should go. And we're very glad, Kathleen and I, and the rest of the staff, to have been able to provide the council with the update related to the funding opportunities that we have with the resources. That's an important thing, because it's very difficult for the council to have that kind of strategic conversation related to facility management if you don't know what the revenue stream is. And since there is a revenue stream, you can have a different conversation. So we anticipate the fall, we're going to spend some time related to that topic. You can call it a priority, you can not call it a priority based on what I just said, but that is baked into our market.
And may I just insert, for anyone who doesn't know, when he talks about CIPs, it's capital improvement projects. Some people won't know what that is.
Yeah.
So one thing I'd like to say, when we look at where the city revenues are, and, we just had a budget overview update that gave us a pretty rosy picture. But also in one of our subcommittees that I work on with Mayor Mackin, we're looking on the fees structure. And going over this list of probably, I want to say it was 55 pages. 65 pages of different fees in the city and what it really costs us to provide that service.
And how long ago was it updated?
It's been forever.
Right.
Okay. They haven't looked at these fees for a decade. And we were looking at things that may cost the city
$350.
$350, and we're charging $20 for it. We had, and some of the things were items that the city wants to subsidize. I'm going to pull one out that is a feel-good project kind of thing, and it's swim lessons. And I'm using fake numbers here. Cost us $267 to provide a block of swim lessons, and we're charging $45.
Or 18.
Or 18.
Yeah.
But it's an important thing for the city to subsidize because every child, every adult should know how to swim. And to us, that's a benefit that this council may want, and our subcommittee said, yes, we feel that that's a good use of our general fund money to subsidize these different items. And we're coming back in the next, hopefully, month with that list to go over it with this group on where the city wants to subsidize what it costs for us to provide services for our residents and our businesses. And some things we were like, hell no, we want to charge what it costs. Why would we be giving this benefit or subsidizing Joe Blow Company when we can better put that to something else? And so I think once we go through that list and we get the fees into alignment and the city, the council lets staff know where we're willing to subsidize and where we think no. I think a lot of our fees, it will help how our budget looks on how profitable or unprofitable different departments are. And I think that will allow us to have more money to put into our infrastructure and to have real pricing. And some of the things are in planning. The cost for a water heater permit, let's say, it costs us $500 to instigate that permit, but we're only charging $50. Do we want people to not get the water heater permit? Do we want to know that water heater is put in correctly? So it's worth it to us not to charge what it costs for that permit necessarily, because it's important that the house doesn't blow up. And so there's a lot of those decisions that I'm hoping this council is going to go through sort of line by line and decide what's a priority to them. And I think it'll make a big difference on where we have some excesses that can be put back into the system, not just relying on this year's windfall that might be a continuing windfall on our budget. But
maybe that money offsets the subsidies it may not generate enough to go back in the system, but it may generate enough for it to be in balance where, you're subsidizing some lessons, but you're getting the full cost of something over here, and that's just.
And that's how we looked at it. We looked at it a pretty blue sky. And it wasn't just looking at what it costs us to provide the service. It was looking at this entire overarching cost, the cost of real cost of employees, not their hourly labor. Where they included time off, they included, they don't really get any hour working moments out of that. And so I think that's something that we're bringing back from the subcommittee that can make a big difference budgetarily on how we use our general fund and how we subsidize programs that are important to us. Because, some things in the city's realm, people expect to get by paying their property taxes and, all the other things that the public and businesses are paying into the city, what they're going to get back. So, some things we can't charge what it costs because of state law. The state says, no, you can't charge for this, and even if it costs you $500 to do it, you just have to do it for free. But I think looking at that is going to be very instructive to this. I think it was very instructive to the staff who had to provide this information. But it was one of the better consulting fees that I've seen spent here at the city for an informational level type of study that really is going to pay off with big benefits on knowing and letting the public know what the city is providing to them and what it actually costs to provide it to them. So I think that will make a difference on our long-term, uh, sustainability and feasibility of our electionary process. And it may allow for other things to go forward, whether that's capital improvements or fun stuff.
Facilities meeting.
Yeah. Councilmember?
Yeah, so, capital improvements, right? I don't think that anyone here doesn't think that is a super priority. Speaking of like, what are those important things, the criteria for me, does it hit all of the items? Obviously, it does. It impacts every single person in our communities. I had already that, we have to bring a long-term pillars of our infrastructure in our community. Then it comes down to, okay, well, how do you fund it? Right? And so what are the financial structures that need to be implemented? We're not going to be able to fund all these infrastructure projects through our general fund. That's just not going to happen. It's going to happen through bond and making those long-term investments. How do we get ourselves in a place financially where we can then have the bond rating to go out and get affordable bonds, right? So that has to be a priority. So always, like you were saying, Ermac, everything is all interconnected. And so what happens in one place doesn't necessarily neatly just stay right there. It has impacts in other areas. And so as we go through these lists of priorities, I fully agree with you, Colleen, that we have to be looking at it in a more cohesive and interconnected perspective. So, in regards to capital improvements, I hope that staff comes back with a very detailed, way of how we would get our hands around this.
And then that product would go through a process with the council, with there some staff recommendations associated, which I have some priorities, but the council then can make some decisions on how it wants to prioritize those funds. And certainly, Maz and I are thinking a lot about how, it's not just cap, it's the maintenance piece has been discussed as well. So, Maz has been with us for about 5 months now. It's under 5 months. And he's taken a pretty deep dive in understanding how we do business here, both on the operations side, main side, and then also thinking about facilities. So, as I mentioned the other night at the council meeting, we're pretty close to calling the facility subcommittee back together and having those conversations with them.
When do you want to contact them?
Okay.
I think we can take it now. I think that's fine.
Okay, and then we'll have more. We have the hand raised. I can't.
It says Michael.
Michael, do you want to ask your question or make your comment?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Michael Barnes. I'm a Brisbane resident. This is my quick list of priorities. One, I agree that Brisbane needs to resolve its bond rating problem. I know that in April you're supposed to get audited results, but that's in the future. That's got to be priority number one. That addresses the financial issues that all council members are concerned with. Second, make a decision on the use or sale of the Bank of America. You've spent over $500,000 on interest on that site. That's big money, just going to nothing. Make a decision and move on. And third, prioritize active recreation. Now, active recreation is cheap and highly efficient use of city funding. Think about the basketball court and the skate park, almost zero maintenance and always in use. Some goals for active recreation are, in June of 2026, fund the completion of the Crocker Trail Master Plan CEQA filing optional task. 2, in June 2026, fund a few basic Crocker Trail bike features and exercise stations. 3, by the end of 2026, install basic Crocker Trail active recreation features. In June of 2026, use general fund revenue to purchase active recreation features on Sierra Point. bike features for the Parcel R side streets, and replace the exercise station out there. These are very low cost and high impact features and feed off of the city's process that has been going on for over 5 years in the case of Sierra Point and Crocker Trail Master Plan. Just follow through on these low cost issues. I know that some council members call them nice to have or shiny things, but they are essentially a promise you have made to the people of Brisbane. The people of Brisbane have given you their feedback, and please just follow through. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else? Emmett, up there. We have to put it in. How's that?
I thought that was the chip chart.
Hang on. With that said, first things first, anybody who doesn't know it, the password for Wi-Fi here is SFONO. Oh, okay, back to priorities. Money first. You can't spend it unless you got it. If you want a bigger house and you don't have enough money, you get a better job. So what do? We have to solve the money problem first. You can't get anything done if you don't have the money. If you have more money, you can do more things. The list of things that we can do is going to be constrained by the amount of money we have. So, first, prevent or reduce expenditures. Don't waste it. Stop hemorrhaging money. Get our bond rating up. I agree with Michael on that point, 100%. Our bond rating is abysmal? Is that the right word? I don't know. It's low.
It doesn't exist.
Non-existent. Okay, sorry. Good. It was good. It was decent at one point. Once you start, we need to spend more time. I hear all the talk about things that we're going to do and places we're going to spend the money. I want to hear more conversation about how we're going to increase money and revenue inside so that we can have the conversations about, more conversation about how to spend money. Spending money is fun, but the things we're talking about spending money on aren't necessarily fun. I mean, nobody wants to talk about sewer replacements. It's not exactly sexy. It's not a legacy project, but it's necessary. But we go on that way. We can make more money. We can hit more of the items that we need to deal with. The priority list and priorities in general. When you're doing these types of things, I've done them, I don't know how many times, dozens, hundreds. You go from one to 10 about what you want to accomplish. You're literally going to make a list of 1 to 10. You may not get, and they're going to be high level and they're going to be broken down. And you can stop at a certain point and say, hey, we can only do 6 of these. The next 7 or 8 after this first 6 are well, I hope we get to these next year, or next quarter, or next period. But you keep the focus on the 6 items in question, or 3, whatever number you come up with that we can afford to do, so that we can actually keep the focus. If you've got 72 items that you're quote unquote focused on, I think that's the definition of not focused. So I don't want to hear about 50 things or 60 things that you could do. I think it's great to have them, but get down to the money first. Then you can start talking about capital improvements and everything else. Lastly, good companies spend about 15% of their budget on research every year. It's a simple number. If you're doing any evaluation of a company in the stock market, 15%. They're spending 10%. I don't want to invest in because they're not a future company. They're looking in the past. 5%, forget them. 20%, I'm interested. 15 is a really nice number. We're not a company, we're a city. We should have some money spent on research, things that we're going to do to study to make our lives better in the future. I think Frank's example of the water reclamation study is a really good idea. It might produce money. It might reduce our costs. It might just, make us spend less money in the future, hemorrhaging money. It might not. But we don't know the answer to that until you actually invest a little bit of money to make a study. It's the example. There's probably 10 more examples like that of low-cost studies where we can actually go do something for a small amount of money to figure out how to save a couple of $1 million a year. We're saving a couple of $1 million a year. Soon over 2 years, we start talking about some real money. Anyway, money first. Thanks.
Ingrid, anyone else online?
No, Madam Mayor.
Anyone else here in the audience? I can't see you behind me. Just step up.
Nope.
No? Okay. Councilmember comments. Let's just continue. Madison? Thoughts?
This is the hard part.
It is the hard part.
So I just want to acknowledge that. Sort of have to jump in and start continue the conversation.
I think some of these are like low hanging fruit that don't necessarily need to be in priority. So, for example, the council could authorize a study on water reclamation. And until we know the results of that determine whether it becomes a priority. You may get the feedback and it's not feasible and that's where it ends. But if it is feasible, then you can start talking about how, then it can become a priority. I think that there are things that maybe just we can take a first step on.
And the staff's here to answer any questions and not to put anybody on the spot, but certainly Maud or Jerry. I don't know.
They sat me in the back.
Yeah, but this is to all staff, but if you hear comments related to costs or anything like that you want to provide, feel free to just come on up and
So are we gonna go through each one and then kind of assess some of these things? I mean, obviously, stick with water reclamation, you can say, yeah, just gonna do a study. Okay, well, there's cost, there's that time. And, the money that you spend could have been spent somewhere else. The staff time that went into that could have been allocated somewhere else. And so I think we need to then create some kind of criteria. I see you, I'm not narrow.
I know.
I was the house already talking. I think we need to have some kind of criteria to get it all together.
So what I was gonna say, and I'm jumping on poor Frank's back here, on the water reclamation, the water coming down off San Bernardino Mountain through Guadalupe Quarry, most of it, is where it's coming from. I think until that project, they are probably going to need to underground whatever they're going to be doing for that if a project gets built there. They're going to need to be controlling that runoff. They're not going to be able to just have it run down the sides of the quarry. Or come from their underground springs, or where I don't think they know where that water is coming from necessarily. So I don't think that that's something until that project gets through whatever planning it's going to, and the hydrology is really looked at, that we would want to do a study on something that those conditions are certainly going to change. So that's one thing I know we've heard a little bit from Randy Burrow, our prior person, about the feasibility of keeping water potable or usable when it's coming in and it needs to be treated and it needs to be stored and it needs, there's all sorts of things that can go into that. So I don't think that would be one of my initial priorities because of those issues at this point. Again, it may become feasible once we know what the geology and the hydrology coming off that site really is. And I think that's going to come out when they start, if they start doing a program out there.
So when you're saying, right, I mean, we're kind of going into what we might do for each item. So I'm hoping that we can develop some kind of structure where we can kind of go into like how you're evaluating, so that then we can then rate, and so that eventually we get down to which ones are the top ones.
I have a suggestion, and this comes from watching years of community workshops. Just what you did, Terry, of going, I'm not sure that this is the most time. I think you can knock off the low-hanging fruit and say, this is a good idea, but it's not necessary. So an example, marina planning for the future. We could go, oh my God, we have to do that. We have one shoreline, we have consultants working on it. We don't know enough to do anything with that yet. So is that a priority right now? Maybe not. Maybe that's next year's, when we have a little more information.
Same thing speak to that.
To
What information we're leading on.
for the marina.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think we have an understanding what the marina's reconstruction will look like based on what we talked about a year and a half ago in council. Oh, sorry.
It's hard to understand you when you have your mouth covered.
I'm also probably on the way down.
It's all right, I've learned that, no.
We already have some. Hey, Ron's out there.
Thank you, Jeremy. So, I mean, I would say for the marina specifically, we do have one shoreline, they were able to get funding to do a study for the Brisbane shoreline specifically. So they're, right now, I understand that they're out looking for consultants. So that's a positive that we're gonna have a study moving forward, and we'll have more information to support, long-term efforts and concerns, once that's done. So I agree that, you know, when we have that data, because it's already been granted and it's going to be underway, I think it makes sense to wait for some of that information to come before we start taking some of the big ticket items. At the same time, we are still looking at our existing electrical system, specifically out there in the marina, because we had quite a bit of impacts from the last federal event. And although it's all operating and functioning currently, it is still susceptible to water damage, so we want to still look at that. That's something we are working with our electrical contractor right now. I'm trying to get a better understanding. I found some numbers for certain things, but it's incomplete. So we kind of took a pause on what we're trying to do. We've taken care of Dock 1, which was pretty essential given that it had the pump out facility. But the other 5, we are holding off to get a better understanding of the full scope, and then we can determine how we want to move forward on that one.
If I can add to that. So the sea level rise subcommittee also, we have to do a report to the state sea level rise resiliency report. I think that's the title.
Right.
And it involves all kinds of things, BCDC, Caltrain, the lagoon, many things. And that is due, I believe, in 27.
Correct. I believe you're right. I don't know exactly when.
Yes. And so one shoreline has stepped in to work on that as
That-
well.
that-
So, and that will give us way more answers. We don't
Absolutely.
have all of those.
Although we are doing small things, right? Like the lagoon sea
Exactly.
level rise study, we're doing that. That's kind of a micro
Mhm.
version of what one shoreline's going to do, but obviously all that information will be helpful to that bigger discussion.
But I think all these components then give us all the information to say, okay, now what do we do with the grant? And I don't think we have all of that yet.
You know, one of the things that, you know, through the discussion that's coming up is that we already have some things that are in the works.
That's exactly.
Right, and so, okay, that's another component that needs to be put into the mix as we rate, you know, what is the priorities that we want to establish. So if you already have something that's kind of already down the line, well, then maybe it makes sense to finish that because you've already made an investment as opposed to perhaps making a priority that you haven't allocated any money to or any time to, right? And so, but then it just depends. Well, if it's a need that's really pressing, I think the Crocker Park might be a need that's really pressing. Okay, well then we need to evaluate that. So, but again, how do we have the structure to help us get through each one, and then so we can whittle it down to.
I mean, that's something else. We can go through each topic that's brought up here today. We can pull up the slide that we prepared. There were some additional comments that were made as well, so we can go through each of those. There's no perfect way to do it. It's got to kind of plot through it. I think that's fine.
I do have a recommendation on that front. I think we're never going to get through this list today, and stuff's going to be left on the list. It is now 11:20 a.m. We're already out of time today. I'm wondering if staff can't take all the conversation that's been had and the public input that we have received today and develop, and I'll call it, for lack of a better term, a complicated scoring script that we can go through and look at every one of these items and look at things like long-term liability, financial feasibility, staff effort, public input, long-term strategy, and just develop one of these scorecards, which should yield immediate results for us to start focusing on.
So here's my immediate Saturday morning reaction, which is, that is a tremendous amount of staff from a short period of time that I don't think we could accomplish in a way that would be productive. I got to think about it. They're all looking at me right now, so I'm not. We will not have that at home. That's not possible, given the amount of work that's down this road right now. What our intention was that based on this conversation, you bring back some product if you whittle it down, and create the verbiage around it and why.
I think we need to roll this down a little bit.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the pushback. That's important, right? We need, in the end, there are priorities, right? What do we want to do? So it's up to us to knock it out and give you direction.
If it's helpful, I'm sorry, Chris, we can.
No, yeah.
If it's helpful, so I've heard a theme, which is there's a lot of things that the council has not had the opportunity to take a look at from a strategic standpoint for a long time.
Yes.
Those efforts don't always need to be fit in a one-year priority. Multi-year priorities are just fine, like we have it too. So one way we could go about this is we could sit down and we could start looking at the various projects and initiatives we would need in order to bring you the best, most complete picture of the information you need to make then subsequent decisions. So sort of like we're doing with the revenue piece. We've been able to bring new revenues online in the last year. There's additional revenues that are going to come online if you heard business license fees, those will be significant. But that allows this council to have the exact discussion. So I was thinking about the water reclamation project that you're considering. You guys love this one. We can take that back to the subcommittee and have a quick conversation, you price it out, and then appropriately place that in the hot list.
I think what you're saying, I can look at this list and I can mark things that they're on the list, they're going to be more long-term planning. Take them away and say they're going to go on in the background over the next couple of years. You have a lot less on the list. So I would look at economic vitality, which it's going on constantly. It's not a new concept, it's not a new focus. And it evolves depending on what else is going on. Quarry, Baylands, Parkside 2, visitation. The marina and sea level rise are married together. Those are long-term, both of them. Bottom of the list, reforestation, long-term project, long-term focus. IT upgrade, that's 5-year conversion plan, both from the standpoint of evaluating and also money and budgeting for that. Infrastructure, 5-year plan for capital improvement, again, long-term ongoing. Facilities, 10-year plan for maintenance, that's long-term. So what we're left with is council meeting engagements, affordable housing funds, Baylands project completion, which that one I'd say that's going to happen no matter what. That's a given. Right, no matter
Can I
what.
ask a question?
Sure.
What is council meeting engagements?
That's,
I brought that up earlier, so this would be one today, an annual summit, and then we would be having potentially quarterly updates on where we're at with our goals, and then working with the new board products to be getting reports on a monthly basis on their sub-project rolling up to the master priorities.
But isn't,
We don't do any of that today except for the annual.
That could just be on an agenda for discussion.
I'm pretty sure that that's not, well,
we could institute that as a practice rather than
Yeah,
a goal.
I would include having meetings at Mission Blue occasionally, because that's going to be something in the community that residents at the Ridge would like to be included more, and for us to have a meeting at Mission Blue does that.
That's a good example of what Mayor Mack and others were describing as sort of when you start doing this, you get all the other things. So we would love to do that. The ability for us to do that technologically is limited, and we want to make that limited investment without understanding the broader implications, right?
I mean,
So
We just can't broadcast. Like
we can't broadcast, but we could do Zoom.
You can video.
Yeah,
we can do it like we're
on the
doing here.
website.
Sure, the council just, I mean, I would not suggest that a regular meeting, especially,
Yeah,
sure,
but
but
definitely-
not a regular meeting,
definitely
or just a
workshop,
different
yeah.
experience.
We've done workshops there before.
Sure.
If we go back again, so if we say the additional council meeting engagements are a new way of doing practice, if we don't consider that a goal, and if we also say continued fiscal transparency is also thinking from within, right? Those are not goals. So we have affordable housing fund, Bank of America next steps, community center remodel. I'm going back, the others, Visitation Avenue visioning. I think that needs to be more timely.
Which
Cliff,
connects with planning, I think.
Cliff, you mentioned Parks Department. Cliff, you mentioned zoning, and I'm not sure if we can, that may be long term.
You know, it's definitely long-term, so.
I'm not, I think zoning is important, citizens, yeah.
So, yeah, that's-
Long term
yeah.
in that it's not like we wait, but it's something that needs to
So-
go on.
so
here
yeah,
as a
so-
regular practice.
Absolutely, I mean, it's definitely for a long-term vision,
Yes,
right, but,
it is, yes.
so, you know, we're in a situation right now where, you know, the park is moving along pretty well. You know, most of the buildings are occupied, it brings a certain amount of revenue. But, you know, we don't want it to go in a direction that maybe we wake up one day and we go, oh, I don't like that. You know, because our ordinances allow it to occur.
You're talking about Crawford Industrial.
I'm talking about
So
Crawford Industrial Park.
clarify for
Absolutely,
everyone
yeah,
what
Crawford
park you're
Industrial-
talking about.
Yeah, Crawford Industrial Park. And so, you know, we've council has given direction to, Parkside 2 to eventually come together on a master plan for the area, around the park. But should we be looking at a master plan for, you know, the entire industrial park? So that then it's very clear what our intentions are. I don't, well, you know, I'm not sure. I mean, the last thing we want to do is just have, you know, the opportunity to have more and more freight forwarding companies say, I'm just
Or
throwing it
data
out
center.
there. Well, absolutely, right? And so,
Look at it daily, like,
So,
we need to.
I don't, it will, so how we structure it, I'm not sure. So that's why, but I'm putting it out there so that staff can then, you know, come back with some suggestions for us. What is the best way to deal with it?
Could we put this under the guise of taking an overview of zoning and business in all sectors of the city? Shouldn't we be looking at the whole city, whether the zoning is appropriate, what we would like to see develop in?
I guess what's the goal? I think understanding what the objective is associated. So it's one thing to consider a general approach to look at, you know, where our zoning is, but is there, in this case, is there a goal associated with what the council is trying to accomplish? I obviously saw the letter that Councilmember Lentz was speaking to, and it was general in nature. It spoke to, you know, that there's been this change. What are you thinking about? I'm not even sure what those residents are suggesting to consider.
Is it,
as
no,
part of
is
that.
it like, does it have anything to do
So how do
with
we-
if it's freight forwarding
so
there, you know?
Is it are we discussing an initiative or engagement with people about what they expect? Is that appropriate to do at this time? You know, there's a lot of factors associated. So I think getting to what are you trying to get?
So, you know, when you look at land uses, what was considered appropriate 50, 60, 70 years ago is not appropriate today. Some of these new technologies, such as data centers, data centers didn't exist 40, 50 years ago. They're starting to pop up now. And so how do you plan for your future in a way that is sustainable, which is economics, the environment, and then social equity? And so, we have not done that with the industrial park. It is kind of on its own. We have some things in place. Back in the day, when FedEx wanted to put their facility at Gilmore, right? And that was across the way from Lippman School. And people rose up, they said, hey, we need to first do a moratorium on freight forwarding and then come up with some guidelines on freight forwarding, which then the council adopted. But do we do a piecemeal or do we do a more comprehensive? And to me, I feel a more comprehensive strategy makes sense.
Is the goal to achieve some new approach to zoning in the area, or is the goal to understand how there are changes in zoning and whether or not we need to then subsequently, I'm trying to understand sort of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Ultimately, in the end, you want to zone appropriately for what currently exists. You have the Northeast Ridge housing, which didn't exist when Crocker was around. And then Central Brisbane, looking at trying to build more affordable housing, and where are we going to put it? And it's going to kind of, potentially be in that area. Right, but that is an area that we have evaluated. We did do Parkside. We did have that community engagement. And so it's like, again, like what the mayor was saying, something happens here, it has an impact there. So if you do an overall strategy for this particular area, you're, through the public engagement, hopefully they need to do zoning that is appropriate. We also, and just to final, because we have one owner, we have an owner that owns a significant amount of the park and has extremely profit. They can max out what our zoning currently, allows. And we might not, and because we're not aware of that, we might not like that. So that, again, that's, what kind of structure we put in place and how to get there. That's where I'm hoping that staff.
Well, I got some feedback. I think this will be very helpful, Colin, if I may.
Okay.
So, and I should have said it at the outset. Thank you, Julia. The city has not had a comprehensive general plan update in 30 years. That is not good practice. And what I mean by comprehensive is that you look at the entire document and make sure it speaks to itself, that it's updated. That doesn't mean it changes. Look at the comprehensive.
It's not a priority that we should be doing.
Now, that is an enormous undertaking that takes many
A year of
years.
enormous undertakings.
So it is a very fair, it's on our work list. We cannot initiate a general plan update in the next year. That is not possible from a work standpoint, from a research standpoint. But we absolutely see the need in the next, call it 3 years, to be engaged in that process to move forward. But that's if you want to have the most, these words, comprehensive way of looking at how our zoning interacts with one another, that's the tool that you're going to use. And it would be, so the opposite side of that is I would be reluctant to look at like more specific changes because we still need to do that comprehensive looking. So I was sort of solving the whole thing up.
If I may, where you're asking about a goal, your overriding goal is economic development because you're trying to build a vibrant community. You need the housing, but you've got to have something to sustain the city. And if you're looking at the zoning, you're looking at what is going to promote the best economic development. And we haven't looked at updating that. And yes, it is the general plan, but it's all these components fitting into what do we put in a new general plan to update it. But yes, it is timely because otherwise we're letting external forces drive that plan instead of what our residents want to see as what is the source of the economic development and in fairness to Mitch, what does he go out and try to recruit certain types of businesses? What type of businesses do we want to see? Do we want all our eggs in one basket, or have we seen that's not a good idea? And it could happen just if we allow property owners to be filling businesses and we just are going, okay, there it is, instead of working to promote a certain type of economic development.
From a resource standpoint, just to share, obviously the next period of time is going to be dominated from a land use standpoint by the Gateway project. Then the quarry project is going to come right after that, so a significant amount of time. If I was looking at the calendar and looking at Julia and thinking about the next fiscal year, late in the next fiscal year, I could see an opportunity to begin some conversations with the planning subcommittee on what does it take to start a general plan update. Get you guys up to speed on what we need to do, what that looks like. We could give you that color, I would think, third, fourth quarter of next year, and just say no if that doesn't seem reasonable. We can start to look at that and come back to the next meeting where we have this discussion and say, this is what we think we can do. But
It's another member of the public that wants to weigh in. Should we allow that?
Sure.
Well, quick comment, after during this kind of conversation in the past at places that you know I've worked. Doing a four-dimensional item is 24 times harder than doing a single dimension. So if you're working on economic development, that's 1/24th of the effort of trying to do housing, economic development, electricity, and something else. Literally, they compound with a factorial effect. So they multiply up ridiculously fast. I'm just basically supporting Jeremy with the data that I've seen research. It's much, much harder. So if you pick one of those things, great, do it. It's probably not that hard, especially if it's localized to you do 2, it's twice as hard. You do 3, it's 6 times as hard. 4 is 24 times harder. So keep it focused and you can get something done in a reasonable period of time. You want a comprehensive plan, it's going to take 6 years. If I'm not right, the 1994 general plan took 8.
With that said, I would really suggest us focus on visitation, and our main downtown retail cores. So Bank of America, shopping center, teen center, visitation, community center, they're all in the same sort of L. And there are really deep policy things that we need to contemplate that we need to get grant on, and would support. Like, I think it would be much more difficult to do that in a general plan environment. We need to talk about stuff that's not necessarily general plan stuff, like Frank mentioned, deep cleaning, facade update. Maybe there's some type of partnership that we can establish with our larger businesses in town, like Genentech gives back, but something like Brisbane bucks. How is that supported? Is it funded, 50% by the employer, 50% by Brisbane, or, maybe the chamber is contributing? How can we start with, we're on the verge of losing so many of our visitation avenue merchants. I hear constantly people saying, like, I've got a few months left. And once those businesses are gone, it's going to be very difficult, I think, to attract great businesses back. People want to go to when you're out to eat, right? You want to go to you're looking at all the restaurants on the street. You want to go to the one that's got a bunch of people in it. And that's how I think about visitation. It's like, I don't want to move the business in to a street that has a bunch of vacancies. To me, as a business owner, I would never choose that location. So it has this compounding effect where the more businesses you're losing, the harder and harder it is going to be for us to salvage visitation. Do we want that to play a role in that? Should we try to salvage business? Should we try to salvage visitation, and what's the role that the city should play? So,
but I think we're already doing that, right? And I agree. I think it's a high priority.
How are we going to do?
Well, we have a
where
summit.
to start it?
Right, we have a summit. we're doing the
Okay,
moratorium,
okay.
right? I mean, there's a list of things. We have, Frank and I have been working on economic vitality. So, but how do you take all those pieces together and put together a strategy, right? Why are you doing these things, right? We're not having the why to get to the ultimate goal. And that's what I'm hoping that we can, get out of this, this.
Absolutely. On this Fifth Avenue topic, the council, just be direct, the council needs to have a conversation about, can businesses survive on visitation? And if through the work that the Economic Vitality Subcommittee is doing with Summit, work that Mitch is doing, staff and others, that's going to give us richer data to understand where things are going and what the desire of the civic community, people who are interacting with stuff is. But the council will have to sit down with that. This is how it's going to move forward, and that will inform general plan.
It also informs what we're doing at the teen center, what we're doing at the community center, what we're doing at Bank of America. We are contributing to the problem. We have blighted, vacant parcels. And we need to figure out if we want to preserve those, if we want to sell those off, take that money, reinvest it somewhere else. But they're just sitting there getting more and more dilapidated. The community center, it's had a leak and bruise. The longer it sits there, the worse it is for that building.
Awesome. Do you want to give a quick update on where we're at on the community center? And I can build up to it. Sure.
So yeah, on the community center specifically, I've been trying to get a proposal, to get evaluation of the structure itself, ADA perspective, as well as the architectural and structural components. We are, I'm a little bit disappointed that the proposal hasn't been available to present to you all yet. But we've got a piece for ADA that's going to move forward soon, and I should have a number on that, assessment, in the next week or two. But the idea is to get an understanding of what is going to be generally required for us to activate that space again, both from the ADA perspective, any other elements with respect to the structural components, seismic, any seismic retrofits. Obviously, we know we've got roofing problems. That'll be something that we know we have to do that, but I wanted to see what else is out there, and the ADA going to be component.
I'm going to suggest we do a break on
Yes, I was just
way
thinking.
past our break. Let's do the break, give some time to marinate on these thoughts, and we'll come back to them. Well, we're ready.
Right.
All right, let's start in the middle. Back again. Continuing on.
Yeah, it seems to me that almost all these goals really, the ones on the left of the pivot, all have sections of what's on the right. And I don't know if those were the original goals, and the ones on the right are the ones that were added in later. But, you know, when you're looking at, let's say, economic vitality, that includes visitation visioning, that includes planning for the teen center, community center, mission blue, that includes, you know, and all of them seem to dovetail off a bigger heading. And I'm just pointing that out, that most of them are interrelated and so we have an overarching goal, but it's gonna have lots of subsections where, you know, this list could be line item out to 7 items. And that would include everything, which is not feasible.
And any good priority is likely to have projects that may not be developed today. So the staff should have the flexibility to bring back potential projects and initiatives that support the council's priority goals. Just as a reminder, this next year is the list of everything that we heard from council members, so they risk it. Various topics across the
Okay, so I have a suggestion, just to maybe synthesize this. I personally really feel strongly about wildfire, because we can ignore it, and we will not ignore it. And I don't think that is, I don't think that's a hard one to tackle, because it's working together and mapping out, and then I think that you utilize the public and also from.
I think you just activate the subcommittee because we already have a subcommittee and we have been working in.
But do you have a plan for the vegetation on the mountain and dealing with private property owners? I mean, are you getting into it in that? Okay, but do you think you could just do that?
If this is identified as a priority coming out today, then take on that.
But doesn't the wildfire, and they're talking about the looping trees, and then we've got the reforestation project.
That, yes. What's?
Those things can be true.
Yes, why wouldn't you? You have dangerous and you have invasive trees.
Oh,
That are problems, but then we have the tree canopy in central Brisbane that's been removed with lots of infill development. We removed a bunch of trees in the park and we've never replanted. It's like 5 degrees warmer in central Brisbane because we've removed trees. Are we ever going to replant the proper trees? Because that will also help with climate change and energy and cooling it down.
Isn't that something that our OSEC?
Yeah, I think OSEC.
Yes, I think from my contact, OSEC's tree subcommittee did meet about a week ago. So we are looking at implementing the inventory. We did the tree inventory, we mapped it all out in ArcGIS. And so we are intending to bring that to council within a month or so.
Is it tree removal and forest reforestation?
There is a planting portion of that hub. So it's a hub that's online and it shows you where, what trees are sort of prioritized based on need. And then there's also a planting plan as a part of it. And we are waiting for Adrian to come back. When she comes back.
Is that in conjunction with North County Fire? Has anyone done an assessment of the most egregious that could fall on someone, A, but also the ones that are the highest fuel source.
Yeah.
It is incredibly important. If you've not seen it,
Yeah.
Right,
sure.
right. I can definitely, yes, and I know we were intending on bringing that to council. We were just kind of waiting for Adrienne to come back because she was such a large part of that. This is sort of her work. So when she comes back, we can thank her for that.
And has OSAC worked with the wildfire subcommittee?
Not directly.
Working
Not directly, no.
Okay.
Just for backstory, I slept on that.
It seems like there's a real opportunity.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
So I mean, I feel like what our ordinance is about tree removal is like, has really prioritized each state.
Yeah.
And so, cost and the limitations around the size of the tree, can you take it out? All of that, I think has, discouraged homeowners from removing trees on their property. So if we want to, we could identify trees throughout town and we could waive, some things, we could give some incentives. But I think we may have caused part of this problem by our own policy.
But we also have the age.
This is a right topic for a study session in the city council and the North County Fire. I think there's an opportunity to level set these are what are the topics that are most important to the council related to how the authority is acting to the public education. If there is a commonality in thinking related to whether trees are the priority or 0.5 is the priority, or emphasizing changes to our code, building code related to the built environment, and those are all possibilities that one could engage in when it comes to wildfire. You've mentioned evacuation, but I think evacuation as well. Spend some time about that interacting, and I think the council needs to hear from fire how they currently approach these issues, what inputs they take into account, what science they take into account, what they're considering, and does that match the council's concerns or priorities or perceptions associated with wildfire?
We've had some of that, Jeremy, in the past. Just to be fair, you may not know that. And one of the difficulties is we have many property owners who stoically refuse to do anything. And so that has always come back to square one of what do you do with that? And perhaps the only thing is some peer pressure, honestly. Peer pressure from the neighbors on insurance and.
So Joel's here from the fire service. Maybe he can speak a little. This is a common issue for all fire agencies with the enforcement piece of it, how they approach it, what it looks like, the legal ramifications of it. So I want to give us 30 seconds.
Yeah, and I'm for the operations side, so I'm not strong on the enforcement side. We have a team of people that focus on that. But I hear it was the overarching thing. And with Chief Myers on, we're kind of in a new place in North County, and we're kind of trying to figure all this out. And new people in place. We really need to get together and talk about it, really understand what we're talking about. We need to go walk the streets and look at what people are considering a risk. I think what's confused a little bit is kind of the risk of the structure itself and the community at a large scale. They're two different things. The type of stuff, like the canopy, for example, for a large scale incident of policies type things, the canopy I look at, right? It's less the grass, but from the individual standpoint, a starting standpoint, or 5 unit grass. That's the starting point. So I think there's a lot of information out there that needs to be kind of, we need to hear what people's concerns are, take a look, actually get roots of my feet on the ground and see what we're talking about. Like what the blighted properties, what are the real risks there? Because I go out to these fires, every year I go to these fires out in the area, and you see, we assess communities where fires come. And I can tell you what I'm concerned with and what I'm not concerned with, right? And so there's obviously living in a place like Brisbane, which is great that you have a county, that's what makes for the thing, right? And besides the house is mid slope, the planning is probably the best idea, but that's the community, right? So we have to see what type of risk the community wants. Like we can come in and zero scape everything, but that's not going to happen because that's not Brisbane, right? So we got to really look at some of the things that work in our favor. The bay, for example, when the winds come, on the far danger, they're coming from the east to west. That's coming across a body of water, right? It's picking up moisture. It's not like Palisades, right? So we do have some things that are actually working. The slope angle, right? Fire moves fast upslope, not downhill, right? So fire, what again, we have to look at all these things and how they impact. And really need to kind of reassess. I think the community engagement, we need to have boots on the ground conversations, looking at real life things. Using broad principles that are out there, which are great, types of trees, things like that. But where are they relative to the risk in Brisbane itself? And that's really a personalized. That would be my suggestion. We have those conversations in some form.
And they have the conversations in some.
With us, and I think small groups probably. Like I said, I literally see going out with council members, with staff, in the streets, and let's go talk about it. Let me tell you, we'll find examples out there, and I can tell you why I'm concerned with this, where my concern level is. I think that's important. It helps us understand where we can educate people. And then we start talking about code enforcement and the kind of pros and cons of that. Because the legalities of things, which I need to kind of freshen up on. I've never been assigned that until fairly recently. We'll see where that starts taking this, hopefully next few months and what their goals are. But I think, this is definitely something we need to communicate a little better.
If I could just add to that, as a part of our volunteerism initiative, Brisbane Cares, in Q4, we were looking at doing some emergency preparedness public engagement, such that we were working with North County Fire and potentially doing door hangers with education around preparedness. I know that there was an interest from OSEC in being home hardening and looking at some zero and what that might mean for our city. And so there are some efforts that we are looking at as it relates to home hardening and public education around fire safety. But that's not coming until Q4 this year.
And we've done a lot to focus on this. It's a concern. We've been on our website, the evacuation videos that we've been working on to get that message out. Messaging is huge. And if any large scale event here, everybody kind of wants the plan exactly how it's going to play out. We have plans, but it's never going to be, you have to tell me where the fire's coming from, what is the issue, before I can tell you. But the idea is that we have to get together and come with a plan, which we're prepared to do. But I can't tell you exactly, every time it's going to be the same. And a lot of times, on a wildfire moving in, we cannot have everybody evacuate at the same time. Right, that's going to cause gridlock. Right, we need a control. Which is, we just met the other day with all of our local police agencies to get up the plan. Brisbane doesn't have enough officers. No one city has enough officers to deal with that type of event. Right, and they're going to be coming in, and so we're figuring out how to coordinate those resources. And we have a plan in the first few minutes of the incident where we're staging our resources. Right, where are evacuations happening? Where, which route they're going. And so this is part of the public education piece. So I think we need to take that same approach and approach this, the bigger, and I know it's been talked about, but a lot of people in the chief fire said, so we're trying to kind of figure this out. And so, but I think it'd be great for not only the public, the council, the staff, but us as well. Hear what people are really saying, what concerns are,
Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, if I could make a suggestion, and thank you, Joel.
Yeah.
So, just to help us along here and try and come to setting some priorities, I think all the information that we're getting in the discussion is great, but they're kind of like the discussions you have at the subcommittee level, or we have at the council level, and this is a goal-setting one, and I think we need to focus on let's address these items, which ones make sense for us to create goals, and then give that direction to staff, and then plan appropriately.
So if I may, I think we need to remove wildfire and reforestation, and we will delegate that to North County Fire Subcommittee and OSEC to work on. They will be working on that in the background.
It's just high priority for us.
Yeah.
Always will be high priority.
Through the care too. I'm sorry if I heard it too. We also have the emergency preparedness subcommittee that's and Frank that
Okay.
we have to do
that too.
Yeah.
Yes, that's good. Okay, because that whittles this down a little bit. I like the idea that's been brought up in different ways about putting some things under an umbrella, and I understand I've also heard, don't put too many things under it because then you don't get anything done. But we are looking at economic vitality. If we were to say in our current business retail district, which is visitation, and under that, what would we put under that umbrella, which could be community center remodel, although that's not a business function, but it's there, and also the city center. Pardon?
It impacts.
It does. And that could be a focus of, that we feel that needs to be resolved this year. Because there is the component of residential versus commercial, and properties are changing hands and plans are being, and then it's that we have to be resolved. Does that make sense?
It does, but I do feel like it's one more conversation without the context of things.
I think that's hard because when I hear that, and Cliff and I are still working on that, how do you do that? You're extending the range, and then I can go, well, that's also kind of close to what you're talking about with proper industrial park. And I think we need to just zero the focus in one small place, say, this year we are going to.
Well, it should be Bank of America because we're paying, we need to keep that momentum going. We're paying every month. I haven't heard a report out from the subcommittee in a while. I'm sure you guys are working. But I can't tell you how often people are asking me, what's going on? What's going on? They do say that about the community centers. While I understand like we're broadening it, it's really hard to talk about those 3 sites as individual sites because the money is so finite. So, hey, if we get something from Kevin Mullen, that totally changes things for the community center. But if we don't, there's no way we're going to be able to develop Bank of America, especially if there's no housing as part of that component. Bank of America, the teen center, the community center, we may say, okay, we really want to develop a community center and we need an influx of funds. We're going to sell the teen center and take that money and apply it here. So there's 3 dilapidated vacant properties. And I think we need to have a plan that takes a look at all of them because if we sell one option, that can fund the work that we need to do somewhere else.
Well, that's one option, doesn't mean you have to do it that way.
No.
And my concern is that we not just look at buildings and that we look at the context of the area.
Well, I feel like it's all connected, right? It's our whole entrance to town, right up through our main corridor as part of our community. We talked about our retail district, but right now, some of our most thriving retail is that
I completely agree with you, which is why we wanted to have an overview on Parkside too. Because we didn't want to just say retail should just be visitation, that we need to look at the business facing Bayshore Boulevard being that economic generator could help businesses on visitation, but also capitalizing on, we've got the smart lanes on Bayshore. It's going to be diverting traffic from the highway. Got developments going north and south. So where we talk about needing 12,000 vehicles going by every day, we have that. We have that.
More.
Exactly. And even with people working from home, we have that now. So we can capitalize on that.
The city council has supported the Parkside 2 process that kicked off a little earlier this year. If I'm recalling correctly, there was a desire to have some reporting and kind of where we are in the next steps. And I could say probably by the end of this fiscal year. I think that was my sense of what I heard from
ASAP.
Yeah. So if the council is going to continue to support the Parkside 2 process, and that is the collective council's understanding that will be the trigger then to understand what to do with B of A, then you need to celebrate or support the Parkside 2 process. I think the collective council needs to get some clarity sooner than later from the subcommittee on what the scope is of it. I think that's probably been a point of confusion at times.
And you're right, Jerry. I mean, I'm glad you brought it up, Absent. It's on us. We owe you all something. right? And we've been doing our due diligence, working with staff. We need a little bit more information. I feel we're pretty close to be able to give some suggestions, right? So that then the full council can, as a collective, continue or say, okay, you know what, we don't like the direction you're going, but we need to focus somewhere else. And so I think we are already doing these things. I'm hearing that this is a priority. And so, yeah, as the few folks that are on that subcommittee, we need to,
The only, and this is not putting any pressure on anyone, but it's still to align to what the council appears to have directed to the subcommittee. It's not a priority for next year. That's something that would be at least get to a point where the council can have a discussion in this fiscal year.
absolutely. You know, I think we've addressed that these things, they're in different layers, and some parts can happen sooner than later. But we need to be able to present that. And I feel confident working with staff that we'll be able to do it and do it fairly soon.
It's also been a factor of, we've got staff working on big projects. So we can meet with them and say, we need this, but they have other priorities, so we have to work with their schedule.
Well, if we
That's
know
part
that
of
that's coming this year, then that is laying that foundation of information to then, that we can factor in as it pertains to visitation as well. So I do think that, you know, if the council and the subcommittee is going to commit to work diligently on that for this fiscal year, now we're prepared to then go into 26, 27, having extending that up to visitation, looking at teen center, community center, and how, if there's a way to revitalize our main street, and if are we preserving businesses, are we prioritizing housing? That's
I'm just not sure if what the subcommittee is doing on Parkside 2 is going to be something that the council feels is a priority to move forward with, because we don't know enough about it.
Well, that's the thing, right? We don't know. Appreciate the feedback. It's up to us to present something to you within the fiscal year. We feel confident that we'll be able to do that. And then the council as a whole will decide what the next steps are.
we may say sell it, take that money and put it over here.
Well, and part of what we've been examining in Parkside is to make certain things happen over a period of time. Should we sell it? That has come up. So there are a lot of facets we're examining in that. How do you make things happen financially? That has come up as part of the conversation. So,
And if that's the choice, then, you know, we can take that money and say, we can apply it to a million other things, or you may say, okay, now we want to put that to the community center, now we want to put that to this other initiative.
Well, you're tying one area to another, and they might be tied, but they might not. I mean,
We're just
we got this
reimbursing
thing
our-
here, the report the other night, and there could be money that could go towards making the community center.
If there's a funding.
Well, I mean, the site has been decommissioned, the whole library, for a long time, and it's started becoming dilapidated, and there's a lot of interest from the community to make it a viable space. Obviously, that's a priority of the council. Is it high enough priority to say, staff, go out and do the work and, allocate the funds? That's one of the main things that we do as the council is to, allocate how the money shall be spent. If we say, no, we don't want it, we want it to put it into something else that we think is a higher priority, that in that the collective of the council, then so be it. But, again, if you're looking at the community center, the old library, if that is important to us and the money is there, it's shown that it is there, we should just do it.
well, I would also add one other thing. If you're talking about should we keep or sell, You could sell the community center property and say it's inadequate, cost us a fortune, maybe we need a new community center somewhere. Is that possible? And where would that be? So I think everything, it's all on the table. Those are the discussions we need to have.
So what I'm hearing is that Visitation Avenue visioning is a priority for every council member right now. And it does affect the community center, it does affect the fellowship way and the other stuff. Yeah, so Jeremy, I think you got one.
We had an expectation that there'd be something fairly substantial associated with it. And it does start with a conversation, it starts with data and supporting that. And then once we have that amount of information, then we come to council with what we want to do.
Do you want to alternate number?
Good job.
I do.
Thank you.
This avenue is funded, and we're already looking at things we can do. But I think we really need to look at it in a realistic scenario.
Yes.
As a retail center, it's 30 years past its retail.
Yes.
We just need to understand that. So the businesses that are there, the legacy businesses, the buildings are generally owned by the businesses that are in them. And when that group running is retired, the kids don't want to be in business, it'll be gone.
Yes.
And to refill those with other restaurants is going to be probably less than 5% gainable. Because we don't have foot traffic. And after COVID, we really don't have foot traffic. So people at Sierra Point are not coming in to lunch, as Madison said. We saw that. Now, when we did outside one, we had the economics group sit down and say, okay, what does retail look like in this day and age? That was 15 years ago. And retail in that day and age was abysmal for main streets and for first floor of residential buildings. I sat in on a webinar last week with the MTC about what does retail look like in housing projects, where they've been successful and where they haven't. In most cases, the retail is not successful in housing projects in the first floor because the developers are building housing to sell the housing units. They don't care about the retailers. They're high-stake ceilings are not high enough. They're not vetted well enough. And 70% of all leases in first floor retail are restaurants. Okay? And restaurants mean foot traffic, car traffic. I want visitation to be vibrant. I think it really is a place for amenities for the citizens. You'll have some people come out of town, they come to the library, they come to the park. I think if we do like an art walk or a wine walk or a taste of Brisbane where we close the street and tables up the middle, I think we can draw some people. But not necessarily from outside. I think we need to look at it to beautify it, to do some things to bring residents downtown. We found that downtown. But from a retail standpoint, the amount of retail it generates is this much. It really just doesn't generate much. If we did 2 more restaurants in the shopping center that were good restaurants like Ishka, we generate more than anything on the visitation. The shopping centers are best set, and unfortunately we have owners that are offshore and aren't putting any money into it. We're continuing to try to press that. That really is the retail driving towards the city. That's where it's all connected, which is connected to the DLA property, which is connected to the shopping center and visitation. Now, visitation needs to be stiffed up. Okay, whatever that is, cleanliness, steam cleaning, sidewalks, whatever. But there's going to be less businesses probably 2 years from now than there are today. And I think we need to understand that. And that's the reality. So you can't bring back 1950. We can't. But we can make it a good place to have experiential things to do, whether it be a new community center, whether it be, the library's property to land. We need to look at things like that. But to say, well, we're going to bring more stores in, that's probably not a real rationale.
And building on Mitch's comments, the community center, regardless of use, is I think a shorter term part of that solution. You can, the works Moz is doing is sort of scalable, right? There's basically a version where we slap some ADA improvements on it, fix the roof, and just open the building. Then there's a version where we might look at other partners, such as Congressman Bowman or others, where we do some much more significant remodeling. But the work that Moz is doing, this is not 4 years from now sort of work. And it's also not $2 million worth of work from a just activation standpoint. So I've understood the direction generally be when we got the plans at different levels to bring it forward and see where you want to go. And in my head, I thought, well, some of these conversations are going to have to come a little later because that would delay the possibility of getting this building activated. But if we can activate it, if we can, you've also for me, increase the ability of our nonprofits to have engagement with the community, which always brings people out. If there's some services that are more appropriate for that building that we're currently offering, it makes some sense we do it there. There's going to be educational opportunities there. Not going to expand service right now again because we want to be thoughtful about the monies that you're serving the U.S. That's a possibility.
If I can bring into the mix, one of the other things we explored at Parkside too is affordable housing. Because how many city-owned properties do we have? And teen center lot, we have some lots are too small, but we also have looked at maybe things need to go in different places. And we even looked at across Bay Shore because we own a lot of property right across Bay Shore. So we took Parkside and went, when we bring this back to the council, we need to talk about that because that can also be part of a business district. It's not even utilized and/or with affordable housing because it's close to transit and it's buildable. So I would say if we say Visitation Avenue, Parkside, whatever business district, and put under that community center, teen center, Bank of America, another priority we could take on is affordable housing sites. It could be identified at the same time because that's how you have to parse out the properties and what you want where.
Well, sites implies that we're going to use our affordable housing fund to build.
But you also have funds available, public funds, but we can't apply because we haven't designated anything. And the more we move along in looking at where could these things happen, then we can start applying for some of those grants. We can't now.
I think same for community center, right? Like the more, if it's activated space, we probably could get some kind of grants, for programming or whatever.
But we need those plans because when you apply for these grants, you can't just say, well, we want to put something somewhere.
An idea.
You have to say where. So these are all planning issues that we're talking about. But visitation, business district, Parkside, whatever, and affordable housing as another goal, those are two very viable goals, I would think, for this year. Do you agree?
So we had one, Frank, I thought that was kind of what you said, isn't it, Frank? Or is it just more?
Well, the affordable housing would be number 2.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at the surplus land act and we're looking at Bank of America, this all layers.
Across Bay Shore, all of them.
I'm sorry, I want to track a little bit more closely, but what a affordable housing goal means for the next year.
That we look at sites.
I think it also means that we evaluate our fund and determine what's feasible with that fund.
So is this council committing right now to building affordable housing in this community? Or simply just want to understand what a site inventory looks like? Because there's use of monies that are very, very different. When you start building up a capacity for affordable housing support, you can use it in vastly different ways. And it could be building something that can be supporting people in the community. It could be buying apartment buildings and giving it over to third party. Right. A lot of things. And I would say that I always want to increase affordable housing in our communities, but the amount of money and cost in trying to go into 10 units, it may not be the big thing.
So,
We could have bought an apartment building
So-
for like $2.5
I know. So we have our affordable housing subcommittee, and all the things that you mentioned, Madison, we have been talking about those things,
Yeah.
right? And then in the end, it all comes down to the size of the location and the amount of money. And so we do have an affordable housing strategic plan, and then it gives, what are the suggested things that we could do. In the end, it's like, okay, of all these things that have been suggested, I think that's kind of like where you're getting at. It's like, okay, well, then where do you want to build it, right? So it's like, okay,
Or do you?
or exactly.
Build it or buy it.
Or do you want your affordable housing monies to go to people who are already in the community, who are
Right.
struggling? And then there's various programs. Julia can speak to priorities topic.
Well, I just wanted to know on this topic, so as others have brought up, also members have brought up, we have the affordable housing strategic plan. There's actually a strategy in there to evaluate sites that is for housing potential. Staff has, we contract, as you many of you know, with partners for housing support staff services, and we have a work plan with them on this year's fiscal year work plan. We are looking to advance a lot of the policies in the strategic plan. So I just wanted to let them know where staff is kind of at on that, given that we already have established some priorities and goals in that document.
I just wanted to ask the committee, have you looked also at their grants for preserving or?
So I was gonna mention that, and you beat me to the punch. And so, HART is working with cities regarding preserving. And Madison brought up, this is one particular apartment complex across the street from the school. And so I did connect HART with the school district. And so they had to talk about it. And in the end, the school district decided it didn't want to make the investment. Now, I guess, we could, potentially make the investment. Did already, okay, yeah, so, but it would be good to have the conversation with HART regarding preserving. Where you take an existing building and then over time, it eventually becomes all affordable. And that's a great option to explore.
It's not necessarily preserving a bad deal situation. It's preserving the units exist, but it is taking market rate and out all of the investment of actually doing construction. Now you're just focused on building maintenance.
Exactly.
But if we do have some kind of funds, right, and the council does want to prioritize housing as part of those affordable housing, part of those funds. One thing that Jeremy and I talked about was that you get in a situation where, you have these funds come in and they're too small to yield a project. And so you may, we have what, 4 million in an affordable housing fund, one project's going to clear that out. So then you look at how if we have influx of funds coming in, how you can have low cost, you can use that for a first time home buyer program or something of that nature, where you're helping people get into the market, and maybe it's not necessarily affordable housing that is deed restricted or something, but you're still helping people, maybe transition from a rental unit to being a home buyer and bringing that rental unit up now for the next wave of people, and that you could do those at 100,000 a pop. I decide a second or something like that. So then you can still take, my fear is that we have all this money. It's been here. I've been on the council and now I'm going into my 11th year. And it just hasn't been used. And the need is getting greater and greater and greater. And so I think we would all love to build a project because that's super exciting. But I think we just may need to talk more realistically about whether that's even possible. And if we decide it isn't, the time is now to start using that somehow.
Well, we also have a senior population that waits 6 and 7 years to get in our senior housing, and it's limited, very limited housing. We have seniors with houses they would divest of, but they have nowhere to go. So again, maybe acquiring a building or something. We have a mobile home park that is disadvantaged community. And if you've done any research, I recommend you find the documentary online about mobile home parks, which are all being bought up nationwide for speculation. And it displaces people. They can't even move the mobile home that they own. They literally abandon it and become homeless. And that's right in our midst. And think of how many of those lives would be disrupted.
Maybe it's rebuilding together. Rebuilding together, we can also put money into partner with Rebuilding Together to help improve a senior's home where maybe it's difficult for them to get around. They need grab bars, they need a new kitchen, they need amenities, a ramp to be able to age in place because they simply can't, instead of waiting for their spot to open up on a senior housing development. We could easily throw $10,000-$20,000, not that much, to really change a senior's quality of life so that they don't have to then all of a sudden they can no longer, stay in their home and they have to move to another community where they have no connection. And it's so important at this stage in their life. So all of us know a senior who's probably struggling with something in their home right now and they can't afford to fix it.
Okay. You've been waiting, Emmett.
Sorry, we're down a rabbit hole, and there's probably 50 more rabbit holes just like this, we could be very, very passionate about. I think the council member, Connell was bringing up a little while ago, maybe 30 minutes ago, was trying to figure out ways to group these things in a useful manner. And I think it's suggestion, themes. There's a set, could you post the list of suggestions of what you had up earlier?
Sure.
Thank you. Themes. At a high level, the themes that we're talking about are economics, safety, infrastructure, and future-proofing. They're very straightforward. Everything can be put under, almost all those, I think, can be put under any one of those four topics. And then you can sit back and start prioritizing where you want to spend your effort instead of talking about each one of these things individually. Because I can't imagine there's less than 70 of them. If we have 70 of them and each one of them takes a half an hour, you can figure out how many days it can take us to go through this. We're not going to get through it. It's supposed to be done in 20 minutes. If you can talk about the themes, the high level ones, economics, safety, infrastructure, future proofing. Economics is development, how to make more money. Bonds, how to get more money. You need to be able to make money to be able to pay the bonds and get a good bond rating and get a good thing. Also accountability, understanding how much money we are spending and where it's being spent so we can actually reduce our expenditures and stop damage. Safety, wildfire prevention, restoration, reforestation, police and fire. I don't think our police and fire departments are in particularly bad shape, but I have concerns personally about the fire department's building. It's been having water problems for years. Is there going to be a legal problem associated with that because there's mold in it? I don't want to think about that. Let's try to prevent it if we can. It's not high on my list, but it's something to consider. Safety, wildfire prevention. I think this one with that, sorry. Infrastructure, sewers, electrical, water, IT, roads. I'm looking at those in particular order. Sewers, we need to deal with. Some of the electrical stuff we need to deal with. Water, we need to deal with. IT, we like to deal with. Roads, there's a couple of spots that probably need to be dealt with, and a lot of spots that are probably fine. We talk about them in separate points. Future proofing, sea level rise, rezoning, redevelopment. How do we rezone certain areas to make sure that we're actually supporting our economic goals? How do we handle sea level rise? How do we get the money to handle sea level rise? Redevelopment, there's some areas that we can redevelop. Those are high level priorities. Talking about individual items and projects that they're very passionate about that we can understand is easy. And we can spend a lot of time talking about our passion there, but we can't get a lot done in giving the city, our staff, good direction about where we should be spending our time. So we can think about these things at high level themes, and we'll get a lot further, a lot quicker. Yes.
I think one thing that needs to be said here is we need to talk about a lot in goals and priorities, but in terms of time and tangibility, what could be deliverable during the year? You cannot lose sight of the quarry and phalanx. This is going to take an enormous amount of time. The council itself, the first part of this year, 3 months, I've been consumed with meetings. And it leaves very little time. It's part of why we haven't had more Parkside meetings. We haven't canceled them because we had other meetings. And staff said, we can't meet with you. So I'm very concerned about tackling a lot of big issues that we don't have the bandwidth to do this year. So I like getting on to a couple things that I think we could actually manage this year and not stretch staff a little too far than they have the capacity to handle.
The council, the matter, we're talking about progress. All right, we're talking about making progress in various areas. The council, I think I've heard from all five of you today, that there's a lot, particularly the mayor said, there's a lot of stuff that's been kind of on the back burner for a very, very long time. So we are not going to solve this problem in a day, long, a year. We're going to start checking them off. And, you know, when I listened to the conversation around affordable housing, the first thing was obviously let's get the affordable housing subcommittee together, get this strategic plan, let's start a discussion about that. And it seems reasonable that a priority for next year could be that that group has some recommendations for the council to consider. That seems like a reasonable pace. Do we want to do it quicker? Of course we want to do it quicker, but again, let's be realistic about what we're going to accomplish. Because certainly I do not know part of what's going to happen next year, what disaster, what emergency, what new initiative comes along, ICE shows up in our community. There are things that could occur that completely derail what we are doing. So we got to scale it appropriately. That feels scalable. That feels like staff can spend some time in that without being pulled off of other board topics. Or remember again, 80% of what we do is day to day. It's just processing applications, going up and doing the work, counting the nails. That's what we do. So this is the discretionary part of the problem. That's the 20%. I think for Biz Avenue, there's a number of subcommittees that touch this. Staff can do a good job coordinating those efforts and making sure that they are moving along at the right pace. Again, we've anticipated a lot of work's already happening, so I feel like we can continue that. I do believe that a starting place will be some version of what Mitch was articulating around what do we want to do here. And it might be get us a lot more data, get us a lot more information. So I think we can continue that.
We could have future meetings in the council. If business district, Viz, Parkside, community center, teen center, V of A is all a focus. If we could have subcommittees working on the various aspects that they're working on, and then bring together, like Frank says, if we even had quarterly meetings and said, okay, we need to hear from each subcommittee now their input on what we need to look at as the components, hear from Mitch as well. And examine this where we're not just getting the focus on one little thing, but we're getting the updates on all the different input, because we don't usually do it that way. And that would help me. I don't know about anybody else. I'd love to see that.
You know, I mean, if I may, just, there's one thing that from this list here that, no, it would be nice if we could just like give staff direction, like really clear. I mean, obviously, you know, the Baylands, the quarry, those were in the works there. But I'm just looking at the community center remodel, and really I'm just like, how do we, you know, put in to use the former library site? And apparently what we need is ADA compliant. So that's I guess we're looking at an outside elevator. Can you like maybe show of hands or whatever to say, yes, you know what, please, you know, give us something that we can say yes or no to, or a variety of options within the next, you know, whatever months.
I think, so this is.
Well, I, you know, when you say it's like that, but you know what, I just want to.
Sure, let me, if it's a reaffirmation or an affirmation. Within months, we will have that initial plan, which is the reactivation plan. The simple, here's a couple things we can do to get this building going. I would anticipate some level of direction from staff, from council related to how you want to see that work out. And then there's a broader conversation about it. Okay, do we want to realize some other funds? Do we want to do something different? We're obviously going to have a use conversation longer term. But I would think within this calendar year, if not sooner, we get to a place where we come back and say, you want to activate, you've got the monies here that are available, let's go. So we can check that one off. It may get a little disconnected from some of the other pieces strategically, but we can keep it rolling along if the council's comfortable with that tactical approach.
We have the letter to Mullen and the earmark as well.
Yeah, we should, that one's not quite public. That's Get there, yeah.
And, you know, and I do think that our subcommittee, that Parkside too, can deliver something that the council can, you know, make a good decision on.
But I think I think what the subcommittee just did was reaffirm its commitment to the full council related to getting this done in this fiscal year. So there may be an implementation aspect. We can build that in, an implementation conversation, but again, that's going to be wholly dependent on the scale and the scope of what the subcommittee is requesting in the council.
I think it's also important to know the subcommittee we're working on with that. We're not trying to come back and say, here you go, this is what we envision. We're trying to ferret out all the possibilities, to have that dialogue with you. We're not trying to say, well, we're going to design this and come back, here's plan A or plan B. We've been thinking through all the stuff, just like when we started going, wow, across Bayshore. We need to think about that. That could be part of this. We want to be able to bring you all that information to have that discussion. That's really the goal.
Yeah.
So if we had a third, if we had affordable housing visitation as the title, Mission Blue.
I would like to work on that kitchen. So to a point where it is appropriate for the site, and I know what that is.
So working on something related to.
Not now. We don't have one. We may have somebody looking in the past, but there's no reason.
We did, 100% did.
Gonna come back with a kitchen.
We had SNS who worked on the library provide a preliminary estimate of what it would cost for their services, but it was looking at the entirety.
And there are structural things, when you look at facilities, it's not just remodel the kitchen, there are structural members on the outside that are, they're dry rotted, they have to be replaced. They could be dangerous. We don't want to neglect that.
Council is saying it's similar to the community center. Let's pull Mission Blue out of the broader facility discussion
Yes.
and have, now I would like the facility subcommittee to work on that specifically to come up with
Mall, subcommittee, all.
Gotcha. But it would be helpful hearing from the council today is how much, what do you want the subcommittee to do? Do you want them to get into, do you want them to look at the slices of groups, like if you did this to the kitchen, it means this, and you did this to the kitchen, it means that, you can build on the kitchen, a little direction would be helpful today, so you guys don't have to go spin off.
We need a price tag though too, Jeremy, and that's, we have photographs of everything that we
Yes,
saw.
boss has that information.
So breaking it down with photographs showing what the problem is, and then this is what it would cost to fix it. And if we wanted to do something different, then it would cost, we would need to have that in advance, maybe a
Well,
couple options.
there's the structural piece just to make sure it doesn't
Yes.
fall down piece, and then there's everything. Then there's
This is where you begin t-shirt sizing things.
Yeah.
You can't put costs on, the cost is for today, the cost a year from now could be double or triple. So is this small, medium, or large cost? And I think that that's the level that we should be looking at some of this stuff that we can create.
Are you talking?
I'm talking about anything. You want to talk about a Raptor over at Mission Blue? Maybe today it's $500 to fix, and 3 years from now it's $5,000. 3 years from that it's $50,000. So I think it shouldn't be hard to like cost things out at this level. I think we're just talking about strategy.
But Frank, when you get meetings, you're gonna need to replace those, not in 3 years, but like this year. So the cost would still be relevant to this year. Some of the other esoteric parts of Mission Blue, you're correct. They would be, maybe this is what it is now, but the hardcore things that need to be fixed, need to be done.
Well, I'll tell you that carpet is expensive.
Well, I think that the subcommittee has, Chairman, does the subcommittee have their marching orders? Is
I think so.
Okay. Can I ask a question of you and Christina based upon your experience? So the thing that's sitting on this list is the marina for me, and it just sort of sits there and it blooms year over year over year. What could we do, time boxing, let's do some time boxing exercises and just say, in a 60-minute period, put some brains together in a room and say, these are the things that need to be done for us to assess the marina long-term and put together a 25-year strategy. and come out with just a bulleted list that you can just set on a shelf and present it, so everyone has it in their hip pocket, and you put it on the shelf, and you say, well, we have resources, we'll begin working on it, whenever that is, but we have to understand what needs to be done. And this isn't just Randy's list of to-dos. This is, how do you pay for that? How do you plan for the next dredging? How do you plan, or when do you plan on decommissioning it? All those different things that we're essentially looking at. Right now, this is just thought bubbles above people's heads. We don't have this in one location. I'm just using the marina as an example.
Well, let me riff off of that. So, I mean, based on Randy's work from a year and a half ago, we do have a number that's associated with reconstructing the marina.
Yeah.
That number's obviously changed, since that was last produced. That's a huge number. And in my estimation, it's a number that requires the council to have a very basic conversation about the future of the marina.
Yes.
I'm not sure that any other additional work is necessary for the council to start to have that discussion based alone on the cost of restoring the marina.
So we have a subcommittee.
That's right.
So, okay, so we have a subcommittee that deals with marinas, but we haven't, that information came out a long time ago, but we haven't had the subcommittee meeting. And so, if the council is inclined to direct the subcommittee to work with staff to take a deeper dive into that information that's been provided, and then work with staff to develop options, right? Those long-term strategies of what we should do. I think that totally makes sense.
Do we have all the C-level assets and do that at this point in time? Because you
Just have suppositions.
Yeah, I don't think we have that. I don't think we have that.
Because then you can't really plan for what you don't know until you have that information.
Okay, well, that one per se, that sounds like it's all dialed in.
Well, there's still some more information I think to glean. I mean, there's also some more information.
We had like 5-year stuff we didn't do.
I think that where we were disagreeing a little bit was, do we have enough now for the council to have this level of discussion or more information?
Well, okay, so in your estimate, do this.
Well,
Like I said, I think you do, because that number, it's
Okay,
gonna
then-
require bonding for a special district that currently
Okay.
doesn't bring in a lot of money from slip fees. So the council has to get at a minimum comfortable with the notion of all that.
So from what you're saying, then we do have enough information to have this committee meeting at the higher level, maybe not at the deeper level, but at the higher level, from what you just explained. And then provide,
If the council's willing, if the council wants to allow the subcommittee to have, here's the 5 things that could happen. We can completely restore the marina, and it's gonna be this process. I mean, it's gonna take some time to put this together. 2, we're not ready.
I asked the last time we talked about this in a council meeting, I said, what are other cities doing? What kind of conversations can we have regionally? Because this is not an us.
We've been having plenty of conversations from
So
staff.
it'd be good to know,
Yeah.
like, what's coming out of what everyone else is facing with their business? What plans of action are they putting in place? Are there federal dollars to address this? Are there regional dollars to address this? If you came back and said, it's all on us, and conservatively, it's 100 million, that's probably a very short conversation.
The environment that marinas are operating in is such that you're seeing a consolidation of operations in certain states of marinas that are on the end of life. They're going to be closing.
Right. I think South City is a good example being, its proximity to us, and obviously some people may be aware that the county, the harbor district took over the operations there. The city of San Francisco took a lot of investment in their infrastructure beforehand. They raised a lot of the surrounding area with fill by about 7 to 8 feet. And they still have a lot of maintenance responsibilities and obligations. So even though operationally it's been taken over by another district, they still have a lot of money that they're putting into that investment. So that's what we've seen through that example. There are others out there that we will explore, but I just wanted to share that's kind of what happened in our backyard.
And you can tumble your slip fees, and that number gets nowhere near
Correct.
the numbers that you know, and that's not the kind of experience that
You're not gonna charge your way up.
we offer through the marina to begin with. It's a different price point. for different-
I don't know that fill has been something that we've really contemplated as part of the solution. I think it's been relocating docks or instead of bringing.
The shoreline fill, not the.
And so the fill they did was the surrounding area, not on the docks themselves. So any infrastructure improvements there would be separate. You know, if they do a levee type system to support it. But the idea would be that you do the shoreline, you fill that up, and then you have, when you redo your docks, they're floating. So you have pillars that are high enough where it can basically adjust its, that's kind of the concept. Because right now, the way that we're set up, we have that, we have the seawall that does some protecting, and then, but obviously that only does certain things, so it's a combination. So they didn't plan for floating docks to be able to mitigate itself as sea level rise happens over time.
And then looking at the time, it is
Yes.
1 o'clock. I wanted to reflect back, but I think I forget it. And first of all, I want to commend you. Again, this is not an easy process. It requires trade-offs. It requires compromise. It requires knowing that certain things are not going to get the attention that maybe one of you or more of you want in the short term. So this is what I've heard. Please let me know. The Viz Avenue priority. And I think we understand what's involved in that. Looking at our affordable housing, how we're going to utilize this. So activating a subcommittee on that topic. We pulled out 2 of our facility assets, the community center and the Mission Blue Center. So we'll take a look at those, working with the facility committee. And I do want to retain 2 of our 3 current priorities. I want to retain the facility one because that work needs to continue, just generally speaking. So we're prepared to do that a little later this year. And I want to keep the school priority on there because it's a multi-year priority. That is manageable.
That's fine.
This avenue, affordable housing, community center, Mission Blue, fiscal, but how do you count the facilities? Yeah.
I would say retail corridor.
It's
Well,
Viz
this
Avenue.
is kind of the whole as an umbrella.
So we can cover the parks activities.
Oh,
What do you want to call it then?
retail corridor.
Okay,
Retail
retail.
corridor.
Okay, that's good.
So are we asking are we changing the name of the Parkside 2 subcommittee to be something different? Are we asking the Parkside 2 subcommittee to look at the regional corridor, or those are just 2 efforts that are
I
combined?
think that economic development has been looking at visitation. I think they can continue to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that subcommittee can look at Parkside, and if we feel like there is too big of overlap, then maybe one gets assigned, that whole thing. But there's a lot of meetings to be had.
Doesn't hurt to have different subcommittees examine the same thing and come back with their point of view. That's helpful.
Can I make a recommendation? And I'm going to be candid, so this is not intended to stay. This is just to make sure that I feel that I can make a recommendation. I want us to be the highest performing team that we can be. I look at this meeting, who's at the table, this is a very expensive meeting today. I look out at all the staff that is here, this is a very expensive meeting. Can staff take a look at what it would cost to have a professional facilitator in this space come to this meeting next year and have this professional facilitator so we get the highest output of a product going forward? Sure. Bring that back to council. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've got a marching order. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin.